Okay. All right. So welcome to a new year of learning.
Runs in first grade.
Yeah. Now we're in first grade. It's a new cycle. Hope everyone had a good Chodesh Hagadol. The idea is just to continue where we left off. We're going through the Gemara with the En Yaakov and learning various Hagadot. And we're in the middle of Seder Kodshim, and now we're up to Masechet Arachin. Apologize for my voice. I'm quite nasally, not feeling so good. So Masechet Arachin, the bulk of the Agadata in the Masechet is actually the two dapim in the third parak of Ted Vav and Ted Zayin about Lashon Hara. A lot of Agadata about Lashon Hara. So hopefully Bezrat Hashem be spending a few weeks on that. But before we get to that, there was a sugya here that I found interesting that I wanted to discuss. Basically what we'll be talking about today is, I'll pose a question as food for thought that hopefully will develop as the shiur goes on, which is something that I think about a lot, especially now with Kita Aleph, and all of us have young children, or some of us have young children. When innovation that we live in a world that prides innovation, that prides kind of looking at the world and creating new technologies and taking the world that has been given to us and inventing new things. And the question is, when is that warranted and when is that not warranted? Right? You could say that there are some instances where it's a good thing that we invent, and then there's other things where maybe it's not. Maybe we're outside of the scope of what we're supposed to be doing, and we're overreaching. And so, there's discussions, let's say, in the world of social media today is, it could be more dangerous than good, and when should we do it, when should we not do it, and regulation. But I'd like to think about it more in the context of, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given us a world, and we're on the one hand supposed to come and live in the world and create the world, but on the other hand, maybe also know what our limits are and know what our boundaries are, and there are things that are beyond us. And what's that balance supposed to be? So I think that's a question that will be discussed in this sugya, where the springboard will be certain kelim in the Beit HaMikdash that we'll learn about, where they stopped working and there were certain attempts to fix them or improve them, and sometimes it didn't work, and what the message that we're supposed to glean from that is. And we'll look at various Mefarshim on that Gemara, and hopefully we'll come to kind of a conclusion. There's an interesting midrash at the end that also will tie it all together. Okay, so the Gemara in Arachin and Daf Yud Amud Bet, the first source. So the Mishnah is talking about things going on in the Beit HaMikdash and various utensils of kelim, and it discusses, amongst other things, a particular flute that was used. So the Gemara asks in the first line, Patach bechalil u'mesayim be'avuv. So we can skip this. Basically, the Mishnah, it opens by referring to this particular flute as a chalil, and it ends by referring to it as an abuv. So the question is, why does it use two different terms for the same musical instrument? It's really the same thing. Because its voice is smooth or sweet, so it's called a chalil. Okay, Tana Rabbanan. It was taught in the Braita. Avuvaya b'mikdash. There was this musical instrument in the Beit HaMikdash. Chalakaya dakaya shel kanehaya. So smooth, it was thin, it was made from a reed. Umimot Mosheaya, and it was from the days of Moshe Rabbeinu. Tziva HaMelech v'tzipu zahav. It doesn't say which king, but one of the kings commanded, and they coated it in gold. Right? The reason they did that was for kavod. This is the flute of the Beit HaMikdash. It should be coated in gold. V'lo haya kolo arev, but that messed up the sound. Right? Once it's coated in gold, it doesn't sound as good. Natlu and at tzipuyav, they removed the gold coating. V'aya kolo arev kimot she'aya, and that returned the old sound, the pleasant sound that it had before the gold coating was there. Similarly, tziltzulei b'mikdash, there was a symbol in the Beit HaMikdash, nechoshet haya v'aya kolo arev, and it also had a pleasant sound. It was made from nechoshet v'nifgam, and it was damaged, the symbol. V'shalchu chachamim ve'eviu umanim me'Alexandria shel Mitzrayim. So the chachamim went and they sent for artisans from Alexandria in Egypt, the people who specialized in knowing how to fix, musical instruments. V'tiknu, they fixed it. V'lo haya kolo arev, and then its sound did not sound the way it had originally. Natlu tikuno, they removed the fix that the artisans from Alexandria had implemented. V'aya kolo arev kimot she'aya, and that returned the old sound of the cymbals. Similarly, machteshet hayta b'mikdash, there was a grinder of incense in the Beit HaMikdash. It was also from the days of Moshe and made in Nechoshet. מפטמת את הבשמים, it would combine all of the different spices together. נתפגמה, and it broke, or it was damaged. והביאו אומנים מאלכסנדריה של מצרים ותקנוה. Again, they sent 4 artisans from Mitzrayim. They came and fixed it, ולא הייתה מפטמת כמו שהייתה. So it worked, but it didn't grind the way that it wasn't able to combine the spices in a way that it had been able to before. נתלו תיקונה, they removed the fix, והייתה מפטמת כמו שהייתה. And that, again, it reverted back to working the way that it had originally. And then, as an aside, the Baraita here says, "Elu shnei kelim nishtayru mimikdash rishon." So these latter two, not the flute that we started with, but the cymbal and the incense grinder, these 2 kelim were left over from Mikdash Harishon, from the days of Moshe Rabbeinu, even avenit pagmu, and they were damaged. V'lo yalehem aruka. V'alehem amar David nechoshed memurat, nechoshed memurak. V'alehem omer uklei nechoshed mutzpav shnaim chamudot mizahav. Basically, it's looking for sources from Tanakh that these are the kelim from Bayit Rishon. Those are the ones that are being referenced in the Braita. Then if we skip ahead a little bit, the Gemara continues and says, Tani Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, and this is going to be the key piece for us. So Rashbag taught, Shiloah chaya, there was a shiloah, like water, a fountain of water to wash hands and feet. Ayam mekalech mayim b'cheisar, and the opening for the shiloah was of an isar, a specific coin. That's how big the opening was. Siva המלך והרחיבוהו כדי שיתרבו מימיו. So the king came and he said, I want to expand the opening so that the waters will be more plentiful, in order again for there to be more kavod, or for it to have more water. V'nitma'atu, and for whatever engineering reason, that actually led to a decrease in the amount of water that came out of the shiloah. V'chazru mitu, so they went and they returned it to the original diameter of the pipe or the spigot to be kisar. And then it returned to the efficiency and effectiveness that it had originally. And now the Braita concludes and says, the kayem ma shenemar, to fulfill the pasuk, Ali telech chacham b'chachmato, v'ali telel gibor b'gvurato. Let not the wise man think too much of his wisdom, the strong man think too much of his strength, etc. And the pasuk concludes, right, ki b'zot yitalel mitalel, askel v'yado oti, right, that you should, people should only take pride in being able to understand God and not in their own accomplishments and their own wisdom. That shouldn't be a source of their wisdom. And it derives that from this case, that the king thought he would be able to make the water more plentiful by expanding the opening, and instead it actually led to the opposite effect.
This Vikana Shanema it's applicable for the ones that they tried to make better, but for the one things they were trying to fix, didn't come with like Chachma and say, oh, we want to change things, they're broken.
So it doesn't make sense that the cymbals were broken and then they fixed it and it made a bad sound and then they removed the fix and then it was fixed. Like I said, it went back. That doesn't make sense.
Could be.
What doesn't make
They didn't
sense?
do
No,
it wasn't
so
a good sound when
it was
it.
broken. It didn't say that the sound wasn't
It said the
proper.
sound wasn't.
It said nitpagma, that something like maybe it didn't look as nice.
Right.
It doesn't say that the sound wasn't good.
My point is that some of them were them trying to improve things, and then it was like, okay,
Yeah.
like don't do that.
So your question is the Marsha. So Baruch Shekivanta. And to this question, I understood it the way Yonah said it, that something about it was damaged. They tried to fix, but not the voice necessarily. When they tried to fix the damage, that led to the sound or the functionality being messed up. They removed that, and then it came back. And Shimon's question is a good question, which is we're conflating here two different cases. Where there's somewhere you had something that was damaged and they wanted to fix the damage, and then you had one where they tried to, something was working and they wanted to make it better. Those aren't necessarily the same thing. And so we'll see.
It's the same point.
Sorry?
It's the same point. You use what you have. And try to
No,
fix
but
it.
if something's being defined in one
in theory,
way,
they're meant to fix things.
yes, to change something to make it better, so then okay, leave it the way it is. This is the way it's supposed to be. It's the Bet Hamikdash. But to fix something that's broken, that's just doing repairs and maintenance.
We know they did repairs. There's like a whole box system to get in the Kodesh Kodashim.
Right. So that's the direction that the Maharsha is going to go in, is exactly what was just said. And he'll even note that, actually we can read the Maharsha right now, just if we're already talking about it. He notes, right, where is this idea of Ali Talech Chacham Chachmato mentioned, specifically by the case of the Shiloah, where it was working fine, but the king said, I want to make it better. I want more water. Nothing was damaged that needed to be fixed. That's where the Gemara comes and says, Ali Talech Chacham Chachmato. And the Maharsha says, Loka Amar Hacha Ali Talech Chacham Chachmato Kedelakaman gabe me Shiloah. It doesn't say Ali telech chacham b'chachmato by the cases of the ones that were damaged and needed to be fixed. Why? Dehatam ba l'shanota me Shiloah mikamot she'aya, because the king wanted to come change the me Shiloah from the way that it was. Me Shiloah uchtiv hakol b'chtav miyad Hashem. Okay, we skipped Rashi immediately above, but Rashi is basically saying that there's a pasuk which talks about how the me Shiloah was. The way it was designed in the Beit HaMikdash was from direct command from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a pasuk in Divrei Yamim. So it says it was designed in this way based on Ruach HaKodesh from Hashem. You're coming and saying, I want to make it more expansive. Okay, so aval hacha, but in this case, mimei Mosheaya, velo ba'u letaken ela hapagam. So okay, with the symbol and with the grinder, so you're coming to fix something that's damaged. Uchmo she'aya mitchila belo pagam. Right? Ela she'omanim shel Alexandria lo yadu letaken. Right? The message there is different. It's that there was nothing wrong with coming to fix something that was damaged. You're allowed to do repairs, as was said. The idea is just that the message is more that these artisans from Alexandria didn't know what they were doing, right? And the Chachamim were able to fix it in a way that the Umanim Alexandria weren't. But that's a different message than the thinking that if it's damaged, you're not allowed to fix it, right? Okay, so we'll learn that actually right now. So he brings another source as a proof of this idea in the Tosefta Nyoma in Perek Bet. Shel Beit Garmu ayu beki'im b'maaseh lechem hapanim. Okay, so there was this house of Garmu that they were experts in how to make the lechem hapanim, the showbread for the Beit HaMikdash. V'lo ratzu lelamed. They didn't want to. It was the family recipe. They didn't want to tell everybody else how to do it in a way that it worked so well. Shalchu chachamim v'viu banim el Alexandria shebemitzrayim. So the Chachamim said, okay, we'll go send for the experts in Alexandria. They'll come and do it if you won't teach us. Shayu ofin kayotze behen. Then these experts in Alexandria tried to cook it in the same way. Ela she'en bekin lirodota. But they didn't know how to remove the bread from the oven in the way Shel Beit Garmu hayu mesikin et hatanur mibachutz v'nirdid mibifnim Shel Alexandrian lo hayu osin ken. Okay, so there's a difference in the shita that the Beit Garmu knew how to kind of remove the bread in a particular way, and the Umanim in Alexandria did it differently. V'yesh omrim zo hayta mitapshut. Okay, the details less important. Ukshe'adu chachamim b'davar. Once the chachamim realized that they had sent for the chachamim for Alexandria, it's called the secular wisdom to come and make bread. But really, this family of Garmu that had been doing it for centuries in a particular way, they knew how to do it better than these wise men from Alexandria. The Chachamim learned from that. That somehow there's a message from this of don't think that, these people, that there's this idea of that the Chachamim from Alexandria, they don't necessarily know what they're doing. And when it comes to these kelim in the Beit HaMikdash, you can rely on your own misorah versus going and running after the wisdom of the day and the expertise of the day. But again, the point there, to echo the Marasha, that's different from the idea of saying, and then there's almost a separate question of if something is not broken and it's working the way it's working and it's used in the Beit HaMikdash, or it's something that you've inherited from the divine, so are you allowed to try and improve it, or should you leave it the way it is? And that's perhaps the message of Ayitala Chacham B'Chachmato. Does that make sense?
Weren't they just trying to carry on because they refused to? It wasn't that they were trying to improve. They were just trying to continue. They refused to share the secret, so no one else could do it. It wasn't a matter of trying to improve, rather just continue. With
the bread, you're saying? Yeah. Yeah, no, so that, right. I think that with the bread, so yeah, maybe I wasn't clear. So I think, in my mind, I agree with the Maharsha here that there's two different points. There's the point of when it comes to Umanim Alexandria, the message is, even though you could say, oh, this Beit Garmu, why aren't they sharing their secret? Why are they being so stingy? Okay, but it's for a holy purpose. But in the end, they're right in the sense that you try to go and find it from somewhere else, but there's something, you're missing the special ingredient of Beit Garmu, and there's something about that's valuable, right? Not to go and just send to the Umanim Alexandria. Again, it's the question is an important question because I don't know the Bayit Rishon, we're told Shlomo Melech, he went and he sent for all of these people from Lebanon, in a lot of instances, and the Beit HaMikdash Sheni Bichlal, it was done with foreign help to build it up. So when are you supposed to use foreign help or like new technologies versus just this is the way that it's been done for a long time, and we kind of stick to that because that's the way that it's supposed to be done, and that really, there's a wisdom in the inherited experience that's been accumulated over centuries by Beit Garmu that these wise men don't necessarily have. And then there's, I think, a separate question of, and then in general, Al yitalel chacham b'chachmato, when are we supposed to try to improve things versus to say that you've overstepped your boundaries? And is that applied just in the realm of Beit HaMikdash or maybe more broadly?
It might be like too big of a picture, but in theory, it would seem that Judaism, like the whole concept of Tikkun Olam and a lot of the different opinions on why we're here is to make the world a better place, to make us better. If we're not supposed to do stuff like that, then it feels a bit contradictory.
But what does that mean?
Well,
to
no,
make
how do
us
we
better?
do it? Based on the original version or update? Do we update the way we
Right, that's the
the
controversy.
world?
Right, it's a shkafic question at its core. Yeah. Okay. If we turn the page. I think I'm good. Okay. If we look at the Iyun Yaakov, okay, in the screenshot on page 2, so on the left side of the Iyun Yaakov, the second line from the bottom, it says V'tziva Melech. The V'tziva is in big letters. V'tziva Melech v'harchibuhu. Okay, we'll be focusing on this now for the rest. The idea of the king. It doesn't say why the king wanted to expand it. We just kind of assumed that the king wanted to expand it, maybe so that would be more water would gush out. It would be easy. Easy for mamav. Yeah. Well, what does that mean? Why does he care? She's for mamav. But no, you're right. He does say why. It says why he wanted to expand it, but why did he want it to be expanded? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So Ayin b'Marsha. The Iyun Yaakov says, see the Marsha. V'nireh d'me'ay ta'ama nimshelu limud toratenu k'ma'ayan ha'mitgaber. So Iyun Yaakov just notes that this is why we have this idea that limud Torah is compared to a fountain that is overflowing, or it's becoming stronger and stronger. And then in the second screenshot, Kedi'ita, Perek B'Davot, Ki Koved Al Yad Yirchava, I can't really read it, okay, V'loit Onu Miyad, Tzido Kedida B'Masechet Avodah Zarah. He basically quotes something from Masechet Avot and something from Masechet Avodah Zarah, which I brought, the Avodah Zarah and Daf Yotel Amud Aleph, and the next source. Amar Rava, Amar Rav. Schora Amar Rav Huna. Mai dichtiv, why does it say in Mishlei, Hon mehevel yimaed v'kovetz al yad irbeh, which translates to someone who has wealth in bundles will be decreased, but somebody who gathers it slowly, it will increase. In other words, a slow but steady handling of one's finances will be successful, but someone who grabs a lot at once, it will disappear. So imoseh adam torato chavilot mitmaet v'im kovetz al yad yirbeh. So it compares. It says hon here doesn't mean physical wealth; it means spiritual wealth, namely Torah, and it's an eitzah on how to learn. That if a person sits and he learns Torah, a crazy amount for a very short amount of time, and then he moves on, and then he does it again, it's not going to mitmayet. It's not going to last. Right? You need hatmada. You need to learn, every day, slowly but consistently, and then it will increase. But trying to do a lot at once and then to get burnt out, that will not be a successful methodology. Okay, Amar Rava, Yadei Rabbanan laha milta ve'avrela. Rava says the Rabbanan know this to be true, but they violate it anyway. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Ana avidete v'kayem biyadi. And Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, I did this and it worked for me. Okay.
Which way did he do?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if he's confirming the teaching or he's saying, no, I did the chavilot and this eitzah is not correct. It's not, I think you can read it either way, to be honest. Amar Rav Shizbi Mishmei Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Maybe Rashi's, I don't know, we can check the Mefarshim. Amar Rav Shizbi Mishmei Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Mai dichti, why does it say, Lo yachorach miyad tzido, lo yichya, v'lo yarich yamim tzayad haramai. So it says, the second half of the pasuk, Lo yarich yamim tzayad haramai, that a deceitful hunter will not live long. Okay? V'Rav Sheshet Amar tzayad haramai yachroch. כי עתו עבדימי אמר משל לאדם שצד ציפורין, אם משבר כנפיה של ראשונה, כולם מתקיימות בידו, ואם לאו, אין מתקיימות בידו. So basically, Rav Dimi here brings an analogy. He says, if you're a hunter, and you want to hunt a lot of birds, so if every time a bird gets caught in your trap, you break its wings and you store it and you have it saved because it can't fly away, then you'll be able to slowly capture a lot of birds. But if every time you capture a bird, you don't break its wings, then you'll try to capture a lot all at once, but then they'll all fly away and you'll lose them all. So it's a similar idea, around saying that if you try to get a lot, sometimes tafasta meruba lo tafasta, tafasta muat tafasta.
But it says from the first one.
Sorry?
מתי ושבר כנפיה של הראשונה, לא איזה bird, just the first one.
I understood that to mean like the first, right, that you have to continuously do it like parapa or tzipor, like that every bird you need to break its wing. So if you don't break the first one's wings, then the first one will fly away when you capture the second one. And if you don't then break the second one's wing, you'll keep kind of cycling through. You won't end up, aggregating over time. That's how I understood that. So the Yun Yaakov took this idea and said it's similar to the case of the Shiloah. So how is it similar? That he's basically saying, Kedei Shitrbu Mimav. So it's a mashal for our Torah learning, right? That's why this is important. And that it's saying that the lesson to the king, that once he tried to expand the opening of the water, which is compared to Torah, and then it ended up reducing, and then when they reduced it, it ended up going back to the way it was, to teach you that don't be too ambitious, but be consistent, and then that's a more successful way of being able to become a true chacham.
Be off topic, but wouldn't breaking the bird's wings, isn't that sabr l'chaim?
It might be a metaphor to they have ways of like tying them up.
But still, to break a bird's wings and then put it living.
Stop it. It doesn't necessarily mean.
Yeah, but until you catch them all, take them home and shech them, and I know it's an off topic, but
I don't know if you can check it.
It has to make a living.
I'm not sure.
Our local bird hunters.
sabr l'chaim still exists then, but it's just off topic.
I don't know.
Ron agrees, I think.
It could be that this is a mashal not for the frum way of hunting birds, but just the general tzayad, or that he shechts it before he breaks the wings. I'm not sure.
Well,
It's a good question.
The wings if he's already shecht.
Fair enough. So that's probably a dachuk explanation. I don't know.
Because when he's gathering it, he's not shechting it immediately. He's first gathering all the birds.
Yeah, so then
And
you
then
can
after
break
you
the
shecht
wings
them.
and leave it alive. Anyway, it's off topic.
Okay, let's continue. So the Maharsha has an interesting comment on this sugya as well. Okay, Yorel Pimash Kadu Perkamet Dekretu De'en Moshchin et HaMelachim Ela Al HaMa'ayan Kedei Shetimashech Malchutan Shneemar V'Horatem Oto El Gichon. So the Maharsha says, it seems that we can shed light on this whole idea of the Shiloah and why the king wanted to, why he cared that there would be more water, based on this teaching that you only anoint a king by the Mayan. And there's a pasuk that talks about it, and it's symbolic of the notion that their kingdom should last, right? That there was this ceremony, a ritual, that when a king was anointed and appointed as a king, they would do it near a water fountain to show, just like, the water is, it's a strengthening and it's overflowing, so too, timashech malchuto. And that this was something that was done. V'umayan Shiloah, and the Shiloah is similar to that Mayan. V'zeh melech hashav, im yitrabe mimav u'meshichato yoter timashech malchuto. So the Maharsha is inserting here a bit of a personal motive into the king's desire to expand the opening of the Shiloah and the Beit HaMikdash. So it wasn't, let's say, we could say, for functional reasons that more people could wash in less time or something like that, but that if there's more water, that is symbolic of his reign lasting longer, being more successful. Abundant, exactly. That's a great word. Thank you. Ver'alo, and the message is that he was shown de'eno ken ela nitma'atu hamayim, right? V'imshicha. Rather, it's the opposite. When he tried to show, my reign is going to be abundant and my reign is going to last for a long time, it specifically had the opposite effect and showed, instead, the waters decreased. V'hainu bioter she'amelech mitga'eh b'malchuto nitma'et. To teach you the moral message that a king who is mitga'eh, who takes pride, who is arrogant in his reign, in the end will be brought down. He brings a pasuk, I think this is from Yeshayahu somewhere. That there's this pasuk that in Yeshayahu talks about that the people spurned the Mei Shiloach. They rejected it because it was going too slowly, so they tried to increase it, and in the end they were punished for it, or Hashem disagreed, to teach the same idea. Ve'amar lekayem ma shne'emar al yitalel begimel hatzlachot, right? Chacham bechachmato, gibor be'ashir v'osho, shezachar ki im bezot yitalel hamitalel, haskel ve'yado oti amar Hashem tzvakot. Right? Al Shem Akol B'chtav Miyad Hashem Alei Haskil V'Gomer. Right? That's the pasuk that brought in Rashi that we didn't see. That the Mei Shiloach was Akol B'chtav Miyad Hashem. That the Mei Shiloach was built based on the way that Hashem wanted it. And you want to come now and expand it for a symbolic expression of how your kingship will last. You're going to alter the way that Hashem created the Mei Shiloach. Nitmaet. It's going to fail. You're going to stumble. And so the Maharsha takes, I think, through connecting the Mei Shiloach to this Sugin Kretut, he takes this discussion around, should we mess with something that we've inherited and try to improve it if it's working, maybe limited to the context of the Beit HaMikdash, maybe not. And he creates a moral dimension to that. And he says, this is really about, don't be too arrogant as to think that you should come and fix something in order to reflect on how great you are. If it's working just fine and it's Kol K'tav Miyad Hashem, in the end that won't be a successful endeavor. And so I think that's like a nice additional layer that the Maharsha is adding to this. The Perush of the Haboneh, back in the second screenshot, on the Ein Yaakov, so he comes in and he makes this whole thing that we've kind of been dancing around or been speaking about a bit. Bakifin, he makes it very explicit. And here I think is this was fascinating, this Haboneh. So this is a question in like philosophy and in Hashkafa, and it's worth a shiur in and of itself, but we'll just kind of read it here and let it sink in maybe, and think about it later. So Haboneh, right? Velo laila, okay, excuse me. Haboneh, what does he say? Velo laila, sorry, Amar Haboneh. That's why I was getting confused. If you go up to the first screenshot, that's where he begins his thing. So if you go to the third line from the bottom, it says Tani Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel in Haboneh in the screenshot, in the middle of the third line from the bottom. ממאמר דלאל ומזה נראה שאין לבריות לבקש לתקן ולסדר מעשה בוראם. So based on the previous teaching and this teaching, it seems that it is not correct for creation to try to fix and organize the Maaseh Boram, the creation of their creator, namely the world, right? כאשר שמענו גדיבת רעים מסביב כל היום, אומר, מוטב היה אם היה העולם דבר זה כך ודבר זה כך. כמו שבאורח אמרו חז"ל בבראשית רבה פרק י"ב, which we'll bring soon. אמר רבי שמעון בן יוחאי, משל למלך בשר ודם שבנה פלטין וכולי, שם יבוא יד... Okay, so we'll read that in a second. But first, what does he say? He says, right, because people go around and they say, oh, if only the world were this way, if only the world were that way. And actually, let's read Breishi Rabbah before we go back to Haboneh. On the next page, אמר רבי שמעון בר יוחאי, משל למלך בשר ודם שבנה פלטין, והבריות נכנסים לתוכה ואומרים, אילו היה עמודים גבוהים הייתה נאה, אילו היה כתלים גבוהים הייתה נאה, אילו הייתה תקרה גבוהה הייתה נאה. So a king builds a palace, and all of his subjects come in and they say, oh, well, the pillars aren't tall enough. Oh, the ceiling isn't tall enough. Oh, the walls aren't tall enough. So Shema, what's the nimshal? Shema yavo adam v'yomar, ilo hayu li shalosh einayim, ilo hayu li shalosh raglayim, hayafe li et ma. Right, what if we had an eye in the back of our head? Think of how much easier life would be if Hashem had created us with an eye in the back of our head or with another arm. Why are we created in the limited way that we're created? We should have been created in a different way. Right? Et asher kvar asa, lo nemar kan, ela et asher kvar asu. Kivyachol melech machem lachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu beit dino nimnim al kol evar ve'evar mishelcha u'mamidcha al mechoncha. Right? As it were, HaKadosh Baruch Hu and his heavenly court have every single limb, every single thing that has been created in this world has been done b'chavana, has been done in a very specific way in order for you to endure. Right? Shneimar, hala Hashem tigmilu zot am navav l'chacham elovicha kanecha hu ascha v'chonenecha. Right? He is your father, he has made you, and he has stood you up and made you endure. Don't come and question and think that you look at the world and you say, the world has so much imperfection, the way things are done. Why do we only live an average of 80 years or 120 years? Why don't we get to live for 500? You could ask about every aspect of life. why it was created the way it was created and leads to suffering, leads to imperfection. But know that the way that it was created was done b'chavana, and have the faith that that's how it was done. And so, going back to Aboneh, so he continues and he says, okay, on the last line, in the middle of the last line, where it says ve'en safek, and he says, and there's no doubt, she'omer hamashal bezeh she'aya yoter na'eh she'yeh tamid yom ve'lo laila o le'olam o chom o kor. Right? Why do we have to deal with the seasons? Think of how much complication there is in the world, right? Why didn't Hashem just create the world to be constantly one temperature? I don't know, like in San Diego, it's always in the mid 70s Fahrenheit. It's nice. Why do you have to deal with sometimes it's too hot, sometimes it's too cold? It just creates balagan in the world. If a person could try that, and he would be God, as it were, and create the world the way he wants to create it. Right? A person who thinks that he would be able to create the world better than God, if he was given the chance to do it, so very quickly he would realize how foolish and short-sighted he is, and he would return it to the way that it was. And the source or proof for this is this whole sugya around the Klei HaMikdash. Right? Shamar La'el. וממעיין השילוח כאן, שכאשר חלו בהם יד אנשים לתקנה, they took this Shiloah, which was commanded by Hashem, people came and tried to fix it, kilkila, and it actually ended up doing more harm than good. V'shuvam kasher na'asu al pi Hashem nitkanu. When they returned it to the way that it was originally commanded by Hashem, it was fixed. Uv'chokhma kuru al kacha ayi talech chacham b'chachmado. Uv'divei Rashi zal, eina ela nikalak yomer yadveda b'yitzor en zevek adam lo. Okay, so this Aboneh is a very powerful statement with a lot of hashkafic implications as well around how to view the state of affairs in the world and what the place is for man to try and improve the world versus to say this is how things are, and Hashem understands the bigger picture in a way that we as frail human beings with limited comprehension will never be able to understand, and that this is something that it deserves a lot of thought. And particularly the idea of if I had another hand, if I had another eye, right? That you could say, okay, well, let's say a person, chas v'chalila, he's paralyzed, and you invent a medical way for him to be able to walk again. Like that's an improvement on a kilkul in the creation, right? What would the Aboneh say to something like that, right? It's a complicated question of what the line is of before the hubris of people in trying to think they're better than God versus improving the world and that being what we're supposed to do, and that's kind of the interesting question.
Wouldn't that also be like the hashkafa of science and learning and discovery in Judaism? Should we be pursuing computers and cars and
AI.
or should we, do we say like this is Arachin, and the Rambam was a doctor, he was a scientist, he was a philosopher, so they clearly,
Right.
Right. If Hashem let us understand that these wisdoms, I think that He intended us for us to use it.
Yeah.
I think it's more so the lamenting the way things are, instead of using what you have to move forward.
But we as humans are constantly looking for new things, for ways to improve discovery. That's what's driven us throughout the millennia. Otherwise we'd still be sleeping in caves.
Right. I just saw Havdil Oppenheimer, the movie.
I want to watch it.
That he created something and everyone's afraid it's going to destroy humankind. They're talking about how much it really relates to this now I think about it. The whole discussion in the movie is about this very point. But I agree with David Moshe. I think in the end the answer, at least for me on a personal level, is to say there's a difference between intent and action here, right? That you can improve the world, but not to come at it from a place of ko'es al haboreh, as it were, right? That you're coming to improve the world and seeing that as a joint mission between you and Hashem, who created the world to be improved by man, versus coming and saying, oh, this is broken, how could it be this way? Forget the way that it was done, I'm going to do it better. It's a different attitude and approach to what our role is. And I think in this last source here, we have this interesting message from Rabbi Akiva, which ties to that as well. It's a famous idea, but we'll read it nonetheless. This is a Midrash Tanchumi Yodenu. And the context is Brit Milah in Parshat Tazria. So Tunis Rufus asks Rabbi Akiva, Ezu ma'asim na'im, shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu or shel basar v'dam? Which is nicer, which is more pleasant? The deeds of Hashem or the deeds of man? Okay? So what do you think Rabbi Akiva would say before you read on?
Too late.
Amar lo, ma shel basar v'dam na'im. So Rabbi Akiva says, too late? So Rabbi Akiva says, the deeds of man are greater. Amar lo Tunis Rufus, Harei shamayim va'aretz yichol adam la'asot kayotze b'hem. So Tunis Rufus says to Rabbi Akiva, could man have created shamayim va'aretz? Like the roles are reversed in the conversation a little bit, right? Like Tunis Rufus says, how could you say the deeds of man are greater? So Amar lo Rabbi Akiva, lo tomar li b'davar shu l'mala min ha'briyot she'en shultin alav, ela amor b'davarim shemutzim b'vnei adam. So Rabbi Akiva says, I wasn't talking about things that man has no control over. I was saying within the scope of what man has control over, which is greater or which is more pleasant, man coming and innovating or leaving it the way it was, the way that Hashem created it. And Rabbi Akiva says that the deeds of man, improving those things, is greater than the way it was done by Kadosh Baruch Hu. Amar lo, lama ten mulin. So Tunis Rufus says to Rabbi Akiva, why do you do Brit Milah? Amar lo, Rabbi Akiva says, Ani iti yodea shal davar ze ata shoaleni, lukach ikdamani v'amarti lecha shemaseh bnei adam na'im mishal Kadosh Baruch Hu. So Rabbi Akiva says, I knew this was really where you were getting at this whole time, which is why I made sure to say the deeds of man are greater from the beginning, because I knew this is where you were going. Vehevi lo Rabbi Akiva shibolim gluskaot. Rabbi Akiva brought before Tunis Rufus wheat, stalks of wheat, and loaves of bread. Amar lo elu maseh Kadosh Baruch Hu ve'elu maseh bnei adam. Right, the stalks of wheat were done by Hashem, and the loaves of bread were made by man. Right, Amar lo enelu naim yoter min hashibolim. Right, and isn't it obvious that the loaves of bread are nicer? In other words, Rabbi Akiva is saying what we've been saying, that you have sheaves of wheat in the field, but man is supposed to come and make bread out of it. That's fine. We're encouraged to do that. Amar lo Tunis Rufus, and Tunis Rufus says, Imu chafetz b'milah, but if Hashem wanted you to be with a Brit Milah, lama eno yotzeh vlad mahul min eimo. So why didn't He just create man with a Brit Milah? Amar lo Rabbi Akiva, v'lama shoro yotzeh imo v'talui b'vitno v'imo chotcho. So Rabbi Akiva says, I'll do you one better. Why is a baby born with an umbilical cord still attached to the mother, and you have to go cut it? Why isn't it born without the umbilical cord? Right? The purpose behind our being in the world is to refine us. The reason we're given mitzvot like Brit Milah is that we can be refined through them. And it says in Tehillim, Imrat Hashem Tzurufa, the word of Hashem is mitzaref, it refines us. And so Rabbi Akiva was very much of the opinion in the Ashkafa that it's good to be a doctor and to treat people. It's good to take a wheat and turn it into bread, that we're here to improve the world and to work in the world. But again, I think going back to what we said before, perhaps it's more about the intent behind that than anything else. Of, are you someone who comes along and says, why wasn't the world created with loaves already? Why you shouldn't be like Tunis Rufus. You shouldn't come and say, why wasn't the world created already with the Brit Milah Mahul? Why was the world created? We should be given bread all the time, like the man. It should fall from the sky. No, part of our mission in the world is to improve it, but we should do that recognizing that that's done b'shutafut with Kadosh Baruch Hu, and recognizing that He gives us that role in the world in order to refine us, because Imrat Hashem Tzrufa.
Done?
Done.
Yay!